Hello, and welcome to Channel Divinity, a 5th edition actual play Dungeons & Dragons podcast. I am Trent, the DM, but this is a special episode today. We're not actually going to be playing D&D. This is the Dive into Dalgar episode, where me and one of the members of the cast are going to dive into a little bit of the world lore of the world that we play in, Dalgar. And the one member of the cast I have with me is...
Haha, it's Gordon.
Okay.
Woo, I don't know.
Okay.
I fully expected to do some mwah, but no.
It didn't work. All right, so today we're going to go over a little bit of the world history and kind of just the setup of the world. I did want to get questions from y'all before we did this, but it just came around time and we needed to do this, and I hadn't ended up saying it in any of the episodes yet because I thought of it too late. But I'm sure we'll probably do some kind of question, answer, Q&A episode later, and we can answer questions then. So let's just dive right into it. So the world Dalgar, right? I'm going to do a brief little summary of the whole world, and then we're going to just go piece by piece, and Gordon is here to ask questions to me about the world, because he doesn't know a lot about the world.
It's true. I'm like blank. I have almost no memory or recollection of what happens in this world, so I'm the perfect person to be asking questions about this.
I have short-term memory loss.
In real life, no.
All right. So the world is broken up into several eras. It starts off with the era of the gods, where there was a god for each island, and that's where they created the islands and created the races that all live on the islands and all of that jazz. That era is broken by the era of the god war, which is when all of the gods start to go to war with each other. That war ends after 1,000 years. The era of the god the first era is unknown amount of time, just kind of started from the beginning of time. The second era lasted 1,000 years, and at the end of the God War, the gods kind of abandoned the world. They all kind of disappeared. And next is the era of magic. We'll go into more detail of all of these, I promise. I'm just trying to say each of the eras real quick. Next is the era of magic. That lasted for 500 years, and there was a ton of magic. Next is the era of Inquisition. And finally is the era of corruption. So we're going to go piece by piece through each of these eras. Eras. English. So we're going to start at the very beginning with the era of the gods, with how each island was created. So, got the gods, the 6 gods, right?
Yes, we've got the 6 gods. So we also know about an unknown god.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about him? Did he actually exist, or is this some kind of fake lore that some Dragonborn have been spreading around? Because
he did actually exist.
Okay.
And so there used to be 7 islands, just like the Dragonborn said in that episode. I think it was episode 11 or 12, something like that. Yes, the Dragonborns used to have an island, and that was the 7th island and the 7th god. But there's a lot of world secrets about him, and you just need to know he's gone now.
Okay, cool. And now the Dragonborn just
wander
around. Cool.
All right, so we're going to go piece by piece through each of the islands, starting with Acheta. That's the island that the whole campaign so far has taken place on, is the Isle of Acheta. Acheta is the goddess of animals and plants and good harvests. She's a pacifist, really cool girl. She's got gazelle antlers that come out of her head. She wears a tunic. She's got goat legs and a cat tail and cat eyes. She's all cool. She created high elves and humans. So, okay, I should say each of the races, my mic is falling down. Each of the races have a different island, and each of the sub-races have a different island, but each of the gods kind of made more than one race. So,
okay.
And humans were made several times. So Acheta made humans,
mm-hmm.
and Acheta made high elves, and Acheta made forest gnomes. And that's why the main people that live on the Isle of Echetta are humans, gnomes, and high elves. Next, we've got the Isle of Hildalga, which is like a jungle isle. She is the goddess of poison and curses and snakes.
And this is where Vesper's from, right?
Yes, so okay. Vesper is from Hildalga because Hildalga is Echetta's younger sister, jealous younger sister, wanted to make a better version of the elves and made wood elves. But then during the God War, not during the God War, before the God War, in the era of gods, Hildalga wasn't always the goddess of snakes, but she was still jealous of her older sister, and so she stole the divinity, the divinity of snakes from her, because that kind of falls under animals.
Okay, that's interesting.
And when she stole it, that's when she changed, and so now her lower half is a snake. She's like her legs, she doesn't have them. It's like a snake bottom, and she didn't always have that. Okay. That happened because she stole her older sister's divinity over snakes. She tried to steal the divinity over all of the animals, but could only get snakes because Echetta was more strong, more powerful, more strong. English good.
And Hildalga's just a snake.
And Hildalga was a snake. It fit really well.
It fit really well, yeah.
But Hildalga at that point kind of freaked out and was like, I don't want to look at these elves anymore because they have legs. I don't have legs.
So she's leggist.
Yes. Well, more like the wood elves kind of just represented the beauty that she used to have.
But no longer has.
But no longer has because of the rebound of her own cursing, basically. Mm-hmm. And so she made a second race, the Yuntai or whatever.
I think you said Yuntai, yeah.
Yuntai is what I call them, but that's not the proper way to pronounce it.
Oh, I thought. Never mind. For listeners, I totally thought that this was a race that you had come up with.
Oh no, this is a race.
An actual D&D race.
Oh yeah, it's in the monster manual actually. But in one of the later books, they became a playable race. But they are there's a couple types of them where they're basically like snake people. There's like partial snake people where they just have like snake eyes and a snake tongue and maybe a couple scales. There's like snake people where like their upper body is covered in scales and they have like a snake head and like big like arms covered in scales. And then they've got like full snake people where they've got like a snake bottom and like the snake top. There's like several different versions of the Yuntai.
Gotcha. Okay.
But that's the second race that Hildalga made, and Hildalga started to persecute the wood elves. So much to the point where the wood elves are almost all dead.
Whoa, okay.
They only have one small community left on the island that is hidden from everyone because Hildalga still has the Yuntai going and killing them. And that's why there's really bad blood between wood elves and Yuntai.
Gotcha, okay.
And kind of Yuntai and everyone else because they were made as a spiteful race by Hildalga. Yay, good job, Hildalga. Next is Zonari. We've actually heard a little bit about the Isle of Zonari from Vesper, because Vesper spent some time on Zonari. Zonari is like a perfectly circular island, and the center of it used to be one huge lake that just had like a circle of land around the one huge lake.
So it looked like a donut. Like if you were looking at it from space, it looked like
a donut. If you were looking at it from space, it looked like a donut.
Huh, okay.
And Zonari made lizard folk.
Okay.
And they lived in the lake. And actually, no one knew about the lizard folk until a little later in time when something happens, which we'll talk about later. But she made the lizard folk, and she made the humans. Actually, she made humans as well. She made hill dwarves, and she made rock gnomes. So she made like an assortment of races for her island. Yeah. That's Zonari. We'll talk a little bit more about what happened on the Isle of Zonari a little bit later and why it's very different now than it was in the era of gods.
So, real quick question.
Yeah, for
Did
sure.
she design it to look like a donut to like inhabit all these races, or did something happen on the island where it formed it to look like this?
No, she designed it to look like this.
She designed it to look like that?
Yeah.
Oh,
she
cool.
did. She designed it to look like this. She put the big lake in the middle because, I forgot to say, Zonari is the goddess of water.
Oh, okay, that makes more sense.
That's why she made the huge lake in the middle of her island, because she's the goddess of water and like illusions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got you. Okay, that makes more sense on why she would put a giant lake in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why. I should have said that first.
You're fine. This is good.
Next is the god Brahm. He is the god of like the earth, like rock and like metal and crafting. So he is all about forging, and you probably could have guessed he's a dwarf. I should have said Zonari as well. She has a big lizard tail, and that's kind of the only feature about her that looks different than a regular human.
I think you said she also has like dreadlocks and kind of more like simple clothing that's a little like less cared for.
Yeah, she like in my brain, she wears like ripped jeans and a tank top.
Okay.
And then she has like coffee colored skin with like dreadlocks and then a big lizard tail coming out of her behind.
Okay.
So yeah. Brahm, he is a dwarf. In the present day, he is missing one of his arms, both of his legs, and one of his eyes. And they're all replaced with robotic parts. We actually saw a bit of that in that same temple. If you go back and listen to that episode again, the statue of him was made of stone, but his legs, one of his arms, and one of his eyes was made of metal. That's
like the statue was made of metal?
Yeah.
Or?
Well, the statue, it was made of stone, and then
but like those parts,
were made of metal instead of stone.
Gotcha. Okay. That's what I thought, but I was like, you're describing it. Was it made out of two materials?
Yeah, it was. Okay. It was made out of two materials. Clarify that.
Gotcha. Okay.
Brahm didn't always have those parts missing.
So what happened to Brahm that made him...
World lore secrets that will be revealed soon.
Also,
maybe.
wait. So you don't tell me what happened to him that made him get those. How did he make those if he only had one arm?
He's a really good crafter.
All right, say no more. We'll take it. I can just imagine him like trying to like balance on a stool and just. I missed.
He had someone hold him. He had someone hold. No, I don't know. He probably made like less efficient ones first, like peg legs.
Gotcha.
And then made better ones later.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So he made the mountain dwarves and humans as well.
Okay.
But a lot of rock gnomes moved there. So there are a lot of rock gnomes that live on his island as well.
Oh, okay, cool.
So yeah, that's Brahm. His island is pretty cool. It's kind of split into two sections. One section is just covered in mountains, and that's where the dwarves lived. And the other side is like has no mountains, it's just big plains, and that's where the humans live. Yeah.
Cool.
Fun stuff on... Oh, and his island looks like a giant crescent.
Oh, okay. Does it go by, like, the donut?
Does it go by the donut?
Like the donut that...
Zonari
made? Yeah.
No, in the world map, the island of Brahm is in the bottom right, and Zonari is in the dead center middle.
Okay, so he's, like... southeast?
Yes.
Okay, got you. All right.
Yes, he is in the southeast. On my map, the bottom right.
Well, got you. Cool. As these islands come out, I should make like a world map or something.
Oh, I have a world map drawn, but it's like my 4-year-old doodles.
Do you want to?
They're really bad.
Like low key, do you want to send this to me so I can like
sure
with all of none of your notes or whatever?
Okay.
Like,
yeah, I can send you a picture of it. It's my like it's really bad. I have a sketch of each of the islands, and they're all really really poorly drawn.
That's fine. No, I can make those into islands. I think that would be really cool if we made like a world map though.
Yeah. So the island is a big crescent, and there's like a big lagoon in the crescent that is all shallow water. And there's a big reef cove that almost like completes the crescent.
That's
so
super
it's like
cool.
a full circle, except a big lagoon, and there's just like a reef, a coral reef that forms around the outside, completing the circle.
Yeah. That's super, super cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Fun stuff. Next, we have the Isle of Capsella.
Okay.
Capsella only made the tieflings, and she is the god of fire and air and storms.
Very on the nose with the fire one.
Yeah, I mean...
kind of fits.
It's like the dwarf being the god of crafting. Like,
that's fair.
It just kind of fits. But Capsella made tieflings, and she only made tieflings,
all right.
And they're very xenophobic. Like, they don't let anyone else on their island. Like, very rarely does anyone but a tiefling go on their island. And in present day, their island is full of a bunch of craters, because at the end of the God War, Capsella lifted big chunks of the island into the air. And so the base of the island is full of the huge craters, and there's a bunch of floating islands that all float above the island at different heights. And in the Tiefling culture, the higher the island you are, the closer you are to Capsella, because she hangs out at the highest island. And so
Whoa,
the better
that's
you
super
are.
Cool. Huh.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So, like, did she do that with, like, Brahm's help, or did she just do that with, like, wind magic?
She
did
that.
She
did that with her air and storm magic.
Whoa, okay,
Yeah.
that's cool.
And I can say this now, I was going to say it later, but she did that because at the end of the God War, all of the gods kind of retreated and tried to hide because they were afraid of being killed, just like the unknown god was killed.
Got you. Okay.
And so I guess we haven't mentioned that yet.
Go through the rest of the gods, and then
Okay.
I have some questions about the God War.
Okay, cool.
Because then that'll finish up this, like,
This
the
little chunk.
God age.
Yeah, there's only one other island left, and that is the Isle of Shays.
And this is where
Cassiel is from.
Right? Yeah,
yes.
cool.
Shays is a bugbear. This is a personal thing. I love bugbears, and I love them as like a playable race. And so they're not monsters in this world. Bugbears are a playable race, and they're all albino. And they live on the Isle of Shays, which is just a snowy tundra wasteland. Yes, that's my personal.
That's super cool. So they're all like polar bears?
Yeah.
Wow, okay, that's so cool. So like, why did he make it like a frozen tundra? Is it just because it's like more northern, or like
it's the most north island as well, but he's also the god of ice.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So he's the god of ice and the god of like intelligence and like psychic power.
Ooh, okay. No, that makes
so
sense. That's
the
really
bugbears are actually all very intelligent.
Yeah.
And can actually use psionic power in the world.
That's super cool.
Not
hey, if one of our characters dies,
you could always be a bugbear.
You could always be a bugbear.
But Shays is also where the dark elves, the deep gnomes, and the gray dwarves live.
Whoa.
And they live there because a bunch of humans, dwarves, and gnomes and elves all moved to Shays during the era of gods when it was like plentiful and everyone was moving everywhere.
Yeah.
And they formed a small city there. And when the God War started and all of the islands started fighting against each other, a lot of the elves, dwarves, and gnomes and humans left and went back to their home isles because they wanted to be where their home isles were to participate in the God War. But those that stayed were blessed by Shays. And so the elves that stayed were blessed to become dark elves. And the dwarves that stayed were blessed to become gray dwarves. And the gnomes that stayed were blessed to become deep gnomes.
Okay. And then did they hide on that island, or like,
no? They just lived on that island, changed affiliation from whatever island they were from to the Isle of Shays,
and then that becomes their
like the Underdark version, and then they just fought in the God War with Shays instead.
Oh, that's super interesting. Okay, cool. I like it.
Yeah, and there are humans on Shays as well, and they do fight for Shays in the God War as well. But they didn't get changed because there's no race affiliate for like an Underdark human.
Got you. Okay. So before we move on to the God War, we finished up talking about all the gods.
Yes,
and stuff.
And the islands and who they made and what they're the god of.
And we skipped the unknown god.
Yeah.
Because we don't really know.
You don't know about him.
And I'm guessing you want to save that for later.
Yeah,
so
a little bit.
That's fair. Cool. What were the peoples of these islands doing, and what were the gods doing during this era? Was it just like an age of exploration where they're trying to figure out what these other gods are like? Are they harvesting and like what are they up to?
So the gods all knew about each other.
Okay.
And so the isles all knew about each other as well.
Okay.
So there was really no age of exploration like there is in most worlds.
Yeah.
Because everything was known. All of the islands were known to each other from the very beginning.
Oh, okay.
So there was no point in searching around for other isles. And occasionally people did sail out in boats to find other isles or sail around the world, but they never came back.
Gotcha.
So no one knows.
They would start settling other like factions on different islands and stuff. Okay.
And they several people did. Like they would go to other islands. Like a lot of the rock gnomes live on Brom.
Yeah.
And that's because they moved there because they liked the mountains.
Yeah.
And a lot of the humans moved, and elves and dwarves and gnomes moved to Shays and later became the Underdark equivalent. But
got you. Okay, cool.
They all, I guess, to say what the gods were doing, different for each god. Some of them got involved in like ruling their island. Like Hildalga ruled the island with an iron fist. Capsella created a religion, and that's why the tieflings are all very like worship heavy on her. And in modern day, there's a whole religion called the Faith of Capsella, where I guess they all worship Capsella.
Huh.
Brahm just was dealing with crafting. Acheta was more dealing with making sure her island could run properly, like with democracy and junk. She put the most work into, making sure her island was like a fair place for everyone. Shays was more invested in like learning more and growing stronger because he's the youngest of all of the gods. I'll say their age order after this. Zonari was just playing around.
Got you. Okay.
The age order goes Acheta, Brahm, Hildalga, Capsella, Zonari, Shays.
Huh. Okay, cool.
And then the unknown god fits in there somewhere, but I know, but I'm not going to say it yet.
Got you. Okay, cool. So, as we kind of wrap up that part of the world history and we move on to the God War, what caused the God War?
So, nobody knows but the gods themselves and me.
Okay.
Who plays the gods. So, nobody knows but me.
Okay.
And so I'm not going to say that because part of that is secret lore
Got
for
you.
like coming out of what's going to happen in the world and kind of in the campaign.
Got you. Okay.
But when the God War started, only Acheta did not participate.
Okay.
How it pretty much happened is for some reason, all at once, all of the gods didn't like each other anymore. Except they all still liked Acheta, except for like Hildalga. She still hated her.
Yeah.
But everyone was fine with Acheta, but now they all wanted to attack each other instead. And so they just all of a sudden made an announcement that they were at war with all of the other islands and that they were going to take their land for their own.
Okay.
And that's how the God War began, and it lasted 500 years. Or maybe, did I say 5,000 years or 500?
It's one of the fives.
It's a 5 and then either 2 or 3 zeros afterwards. Oh, you know what? No, I was wrong. It was 1,000 years.
It was 1,000 years. Okay, so the God War lasts 1,000 years.
Yes.
And then all the gods disappear.
Yes.
Okay.
And I spoiled this a little bit before, but they all disappeared because the unknown god died.
Okay.
The unknown god died at the end of the God War,
Mm-hmm.
and that freaked all of the other gods out because none of them knew why.
Yeah.
And so suddenly one of the gods just died, and they thought they were unkillable.
Mm-hmm.
And so now all of them got pretty paranoid. So they
Yeah.
all ran into different places. Like Shays moved up to the very top part of his island and made an ice cave where anyone that comes in it will like be psychically killed and froze himself in ice. Brahm made like a fortress with laser turrets on it in the mountains. So everyone knows where he is, but like
No one's gonna go up
no one
there.
gets close because you get close and laser turrets kill you.
Okay.
Capsella raised all the parts of her island into the sky,
Okay.
and then she only lives at the top island, and she's actually the only god that still has interactions with her people.
But you have to be at like the very top.
You have to be at the very top, which means only her most trusted followers are up there, and only tieflings. So,
Oh. Okay. Cool.
yeah.
All right.
Hildalga made a big section of mist on her island where no one can find a way through it, and she lives in the center of that. Nobody knows what happened to Acheta, and Zonari was seen making a bubble around herself and then sinking to the bottom of the ocean.
Whoa.
Well, I guess they don't know the bottom, but she made a
but, like,
bubble
yeah.
around herself and then went into the ocean. And then actually, Zonari, her island went through a bunch of changes because she left.
Okay.
The lake dried up.
Oh. Okay.
That's-
So there's
that's-
mist, and then the lake dries up.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
well, Hildalga, there's mist. On Zonari, the big lake in the middle dried
Yeah.
up completely. That's actually when the lizard folk became found. Nobody knew they existed because they just lived at the bottom of the lake until the lake dried up.
Got
and-
you. Okay.
And when the lake dried up, they split into two groups. Half of them moved to Hildalga, and they live in a lake there. And the other half stayed there and became like desert lizards. And so now her island, which used to be like the island of water, is now a desert. The ring that used to be the raised ground around is let's see. It's like a harsher desert. It's like an Arizona desert where it's like cracked earth.
Oh, got you. Yeah.
And then no, sorry, I got them mixed up. The outside is like big sand dunes.
Okay.
And then the inside, is
inside
like
is,
cracked
dried
earth,
up dirt.
like Arizona desert versus like Gobi desert.
Got
Like
you.
the outside has big sand dunes, and the inside is like cactuses and like cracked earth.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the God War happens. They all flee,
Yes.
and then we reach the next stage.
The era of magic, which
Okay.
happened. So before this time, the only way anyone could use magic is if one of the gods gave it to them.
Okay.
If a god didn't give you the magic, you couldn't use it.
All right.
When the God War ended, magic entered the world for real. Like, everyone could use magic.
Yeah.
Like, when I say everyone could use magic, I mean like a newborn baby could use second level spell slots kind of thing. Like,
Shoot. Okay.
yeah, like everyone could use magic.
Yeah.
And magic just permeated the air. And in this era, each of the islands adjusted differently because now they didn't have their gods anymore to protect them and guide them or to worship. And so they all kind of evolved differently. The humans built a city. The humans from Macheta built a city called the Evercoast on Hildalga because it's just a floating city on like wooden boards outside of the jungles of Hildalga.
Oh, nice.
And then just like magical technology was created like crazy.
Mhm.
Like they had modern like level technology or even more like sci-fi technology, but all built through magic and
Okay.
running on just the magic in the air. Like you could make a phone that would never die because it was just charged by the air.
Huh.
Yeah.
So is that like now relics or
Yes.
artifacts and stuff?
Yes,
now?
so all of those are relics and artifacts now. And actually, the Magic Crafters, or the Tinkers Guild,
Yeah.
their whole goal is to find a way to make those items run again.
Whoa. Okay, that's really cool.
So yeah, their whole goal is like, okay, well, all of this ancient technology is really cool. Can we find a way to make it run?
Yeah.
Like, what kind of power source can we use, and what's going on?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the era of magic.
Okay.
Any questions?
Why did it start to run out? Because it sounds like it was like this big, huge, infinite like source or whatever. People are making phones that run on infinite power, and then all of a sudden it just starts draining out. And
Yes.
then it leads into the next stage. Why did
Yes.
it start to drain?
Nobody knows for sure, except
Okay.
for me because I'm the DM and I made it. But other than that, nobody knows for sure. But the thing that everyone thinks happened
Okay. Yeah.
is that when the unknown god died, magic entered the world, right?
Yeah.
But it was a finite amount of magic. The magic
so there
was
just a
his
ton of
power.
magic,
It was
and
a
then
god's
as they
power.
Used it up,
Yeah.
It was just going down,
Slowly
down,
shrinking.
And then that
That-
age where we're transitioning to the Inquisition or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That was when people started noticing, like, hey, magic levels are low. We need to conserve it or figure out how to
Yes.
boost it back up.
So there was an order that was made at the beginning of the era of magic called the Order of Xandros.
Okay.
And the Order of Xandros, they made they were like the forefront magic technology engineers.
Okay.
They created a lot of the magic items
All
of the
right.
world, a lot of that modern technology.
Yeah.
And they were the ones, and they got a lot of political power through that.
Mm-hmm.
They were the ones that noticed that the magic levels were going down in the world. Less people were casting magics. The very high intensity magic items stopped running.
Oh, okay.
And so they freaked out.
Mm-hmm.
And they started the era of Inquisition because basically they were like, we're going to run the show now because we
Yeah.
don't want the magic to run out. And so the era of Inquisition actually starts with a 10-year war where the Order of Xandros takes over the world.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait. So I want to ask, okay, Order of
Okay.
Xandros starts waging war to, like, protect magic and stuff.
Yeah.
Can I ask more about, like, their leadership or their methods of doing so? Are they using magic to fight, or are they using weapons that can block magic? Like,
Yeah,
What is-
they're
what
kind
is
of
their
being
MO?
hypocrites a little bit because they use magic.
oh, okay.
The Order of Xandros uses magic,
Yeah.
but their whole thing was like, we're the privileged few that get to use magic, and no one else should be able to use it. And if you can use it and you're not one of us, we're gonna like shut you down so
Okay.
that you stop wasting the magic in the air.
Got you.
And so the Order of Xandros, their methods were mainly they came in and they took their magic technology back
Mm-hmm.
and they shut it off so it would stop using the magic in the air.
Yeah.
And then they would kill people if they resisted. They would steal magic items and try to break them to release magic back into the air. They would hunt down people with magic. And in the 10-Year War, they took over each of the political environments of each of the islands as well.
Okay, wow. That's impressive.
They literally ruled the world. Leadership-wise, there was a leader of it, and I have a name for him written down somewhere, but I am not sure.
Guessing
and
his last name is Sandros or something? Or?
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I'll change it. I'll probably change his first name to a listener, maybe, at some point.
That'll be kind of cool.
You could have your name be a super evil mob boss. I know you want to turn in your name now.
Sorry, that's... way to bribe your listeners, Trent.
Oh, yes, perfect. Now everyone wants to be the mob boss. Yeah. Or I'll come up with a name randomly. It doesn't really matter because he's dead now. So,
yeah.
Yeah. But the Inquisition began kind of like, I based it kind of on like the witch hunts a little bit, because after the 10-Year War, there's 100 years of Inquisition.
Okay.
And the 100 years of Inquisition is basically like the Order of Xandros rules the world, and they kill anyone that has magic. If you're a sorcerer, which means you're born with like an innate battery of magic inside of you, they would like experiment on you to try to figure out like, why do you have that magic? Basically, they went from a really good charity organization to like a world-conquering
really
evil organization.
Oh, okay, yeah.
They basically became evil, especially by the end of the 100 years, because they started to get more and more desperate because they wanted magic to still be around.
Yeah. So my next question is, we still have magic in the world that we're playing in.
Yeah.
So did they succeed? Did they sort of like what happened at the end of the Age of Inquisition? Because it sounds to me like they succeeded in their goals or aspirations to save magic, because we can still cast magic, or at least Blank can.
Yes. So, they succeeded in part because, in the end, they, they slowed down the use of magic, so magic stayed. But you get your magic as a druid, as Blank, through the way I've classified druids is they're kind of like clerics. They get their magic through like the world in general and through like the gods, basically.
Okay.
So druids can still use magic in the modern day, but everyone else, other than like sorcerers and like clerics, paladins, or warlocks, who get their magic from somewhere, in order to use higher level spell slots, they require a component called magicite.
Okay.
Which we'll get into a little bit more when we enter the era of corruption. And I'll talk a little bit about that as well. But basically, like, I think I said third level spell slots are higher, or maybe just higher than third level spell slots.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
I haven't hammered out all the mechanics, but to cast any of those spells, you need a magicite crystal.
So for all three of us, me, Vesper, and Cassiel, any of us that wanted to do anything above a third level spell, or a third level spell and over, whichever one it is, we would have to use magicite to cast those types of spells.
Yes, because magicite is basically like hardened magic.
Huh, okay, cool.
So, yeah.
All right. So, we're getting through the Age of Inquisition.
Yes. So, the Age of Inquisition ends with a mass order from the Order of Xandros. Oh, so they built like a tower on each island.
Okay.
And that's the tower in Stemdale that everyone saw in that episode.
Yeah, that's like pretty big and dark, and yeah.
That's their tower. And they've got one tower on each of the islands. And so they've got one tower on each of the islands, and basically at the end of the era of Inquisition, it ended because they called all of their followers back into the tower to perform a ritual that they thought was going to bring magic back.
Okay.
They hoped it was going to bring magic back, and very few people in the Order of Xandros didn't go back into those towers. Well, that ritual went bad, and everyone in the towers died, which means the Order of Xandros pretty much all in one day was completely wiped out by themselves.
Wow.
And when they did that, magic didn't re-enter the world, but instead the corruption did.
Whoa. Okay, shoot. Okay, so they go in to try and restore magic,
Yeah.
and they do this whole ritual type thing, but
Yeah.
instead of magic, they cause the corruption.
Yes.
Okay.
And so the corruption is now entered into the world. And without the Order of Xandros, all of a sudden each island had to rebuild their political
Their
environment.
political structure, kind
their
of.
political structure, their
'Cause now they're
government.
missing all these big key figures
Yep.
that were running the show for 10-ish years.
For 110
For 100,
years.
110 years. Yeah. Sorry, because they had that 100. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they had to rebuild their governments, and they had to start dealing with the corruption, which at the beginning of the era of corruption was very bad. A lot of things were getting corrupted. And so also when this ritual went bad, each of the towers was now surrounded in a purple mist.
Okay.
In order to, and it's the purple mist is made of demonic essence. Not demonic essence. Oh, no! It's made of corruption.
You don't need to freak out that much with
I know.
a simple slip up.
I know.
So it's surrounded by what seems to be the corruption, right?
Yes. And it is the corruption.
Yeah,
Because if
okay.
someone tries to walk into it, they get corrupted.
Oh, okay. Wait. So how do people? 'Cause
Well, they
there's
found out
Templars and stuff,
they're
right?
Templars and stuff. Well, first we'll talk about the towers.
Okay.
They found out that if they brought 10 gold and had it out in their hand when they walked through the tower through the purple mist to enter the tower, the gold would get consumed and disappear, and they could enter the tower. And when they entered the tower, they found that each of the towers had completely changed in its structure to be basically like an ascending dungeon with monsters that spawn in it.
Okay.
And a new resource was discovered, which was magicite, which is a growing white crystal that grows on the walls of the inside of the tower. And
All right.
so the Hunters Guild was created to basically go inside the towers. Oh, and also, I should also say, when the ritual happened, the towers got surrounded like that, and basically pits that had stairs in them opened up all over each of the islands. And those got named Xans, after shortened from the Order of Xandros.
Okay.
And basically, the Xans are like the tower, except they go down and they're smaller.
Okay.
And
All
but
right.
they also spawn magicite crystals that grow out of the walls and treasure. That's where the relic that the party got for succeeding in the hunt at the beginning.
Oh yeah, the Sky Michaels.
Yeah, the Sky Michaels.
Yeah.
They got the Sky Michaels because it spawned in the Zand that's nearby Stagrest.
Got you. All right.
And yeah. And so the Hunters Guild was formed to go into the Zands and the towers to gather the magicite crystals and to basically regularly kill the monsters in there so they don't come out, and to try to find magic items in there.
Yeah.
And so the Hunter Guild is very loosey-goosey in their organization, and it's more like a fancy bazaar, like a fancy shopping place where you can come and sell your magicite crystals back to the Hunters Guild, and you can sell your magic items or buy magic items from the Hunters Guild.
Okay. So then what's the difference between the Hunters Guild and the Templars?
The Templars used the magicite and found a way to forge the magicite into weapons, into crystals,
All right.
well, into swords and shields and bows and the like. And then they found out they could use those weapons to absorb the corruption. They couldn't absorb the corruption at the tower because that was too thick. But if a being got corrupted, normally the corruption would leave its body and then scatter and then re-corrupt something.
Mm-hmm.
With a Templar sword or a Templar weapon that's made of magicite, they were able to absorb that corruption so that it couldn't scatter. That's why the corruption was a lot worse at the beginning of this era. Where the story takes place now, it's been 157 years since the start of this era, and a lot of the corruption has been already stored and taken by the Templars into their weapons.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of why there's a lot of peace. But the Templars were actually formed by Horus and Glib. The guy that
Wait,
the party
Glib
met.
has been around that long?
Yeah, Glib was part
right.
of Horus's original party, And maybe by the time this episode is released, that might already be revealed. But Glib was one of Horus's original party. Horus was the first Templar. He was the one that found it. He was a blacksmith before, and he found a way to make the magicite into a weapon.
Oh, okay, so whoa.
He was the first.
Yeah.
He's the one that created the technique to make Templar weapons.
He is the original Wizard King.
Yes, the original.
No, yeah.
And
Okay.
then he made a weapon for him and a weapon for his 3 friends, who was a wood elf, a human, and then the gnome Glib. And he made those weapons because of the Ark Corrupted that got formed.
Got you.
That was like solidified corruption in of itself. And so they fought it, and the human and the wood elf died. And only Glib and Horus survived.
Yeah.
Horus kind of was like, all right, I did my job. I'm going to go. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, well, what now? And Glib was kind of like, all right, let's make an organization to stop this from ever happening again.
Okay.
So Glib is kind of the one that made the Templars, but Horus was the first Templar.
Yeah.
And then the 4 branches of the Templars were based
off of
each of the 4 original members.
Got you. Okay.
So the human was the original Wild Templar, and the Wood Elf was the original Shadow Templar. Okay. And then Glib was the original Order Templar, and Horus was the original Pure Templar.
Okay. Side question.
Go for it.
Can we do a side campaign with us playing these 4?
That would be so much fun. I would actually be down.
Really?
Yeah. No, I would totally be down. I've actually got their names pulled up already. I can scroll through my notes and find their names. So their names were Horus, obviously, Glib Greenfoot, Aravel is the Wood Elf.
Okay.
Aravel Fairhand. And then Elvine Strongarm was the human. And she used a big old hammer, a maul.
Nice.
Yeah. So if maybe we'll do a side campaign with those 4 fighting the Ark Corrupted.
We would need a 4th player.
It's true. We could find a 4th player.
We could find a 4th player.
We could.
That would be so
that would be
much
a lot
fun.
of fun. Maybe
another like quick question.
Yeah, go for it.
Not a side question about this like mini like side campaign or whatever.
Yeah.
How did the Ark Corrupted? How is that different from regular corruption?
So regular corruption is like a parasite. It needs a host. It corrupts something. It's kind of in the name.
Yeah.
It goes into something and then takes over it.
Yeah.
The Ark Corrupted was just solidified corruption in of itself.
All right.
It was the purple mist that makes up the corruption. So much of it together formed a solid form.
How did it condense like that?
So the corruption, the way I have the corruption in the world is that it automatically condenses when it runs into other pieces of corruption.
Okay, so like they had killed enough of the hosts that it all just kind of gathered together.
Yeah.
And it, like just formed this giant
And formed a giant
misty
being.
blob.
Well, it was a
formed
misty blob, but then it solidified into a solid form because there was so much of it.
So this Ark Corrupted, what did it look like solidified? Or is that like hidden lore?
It's not hidden lore. It's just something I haven't put a lot of deep thought into. It looked like a human is what I'm picturing, though.
It looked humanoid at least.
It looked humanoid, but it was, and it had clothing, but it was probably all made of purple.
Okay.
Like a solid, deep, like a dark purple-black mix.
And it's not like seeping off like smoke or anything. It's all just solidified.
It's all just solidified on him. I mean, there probably is like stuff, like fumes seeping off of it, what he looked like.
Yeah.
But it formed what it saw. So
Yeah.
it formed a human's form and
Because that's
formed
what it's-
clothing for itself. The clothing were part of its body.
Yeah.
And so it would just all be like one purple humanoid.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I should say human. It was just humanoid.
Yeah, it was just
Like
humanoid.
it didn't really have a lot of defining features. It wasn't like male or female. It just
probably just looked like
was.
Slenderman, but
Yeah.
just like all purple.
Yeah, except it had facial structures.
Oh, it had wow. Okay, cool. That's pretty sweet. All right, so we finish up the corruption. Now we're into this modern day and age, which has been happening for
157 years.
Yes.
Yes.
How did we get from that point where the Ark Corrupted has just been killed to now?
Oh, 157 years of time. Just different people that were already nobles kind of stepping up in each of the islands, taking over and forming a government. The Templars had a good time because they were able to kind of interject themselves into each of the governments of each of the islands because each of the governments were reforming.
Yeah.
So
almost doing kind of what the Order of Xandros did.
Very similar, but very different. Because the Order of Xandros was like, this is my political power, and now I will use it to control and influence. But the Order Templars are literally all about like, we're here to make sure we don't touch politics. We don't do any decisions. We don't have any votes in politics. We do nothing with the government. The only thing we do is ensure that the government doesn't try to take away our rights to protect the people.
Oh, okay, cool. So they do have a little bit of political power, but they don't ever use that political power.
They probably actually have like a lot of political power, because if they just said like, we're not going to hunt down the corrupted anymore on your island because you're not nice, then like the island would pretty soon
just be taken over
by corruption and get destroyed. But the Order Templars are all about like, look, we're here to protect the people. We're not here to be your personal army. We're not here to fight against you. We are only going to be here to kill the corruption. That's it. We're not fighting other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so...
That's really interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
All right, so we just went through everything that I had planned out to say. So now it's just up to Gordon to ask me questions.
Well, I think the first main question is where... Is it bad for me to ask where Blank is from? Because, like, that's kind of...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's bad to ask. You shouldn't ask that.
That's fair.
That's
okay,
secret lore.
We'll move on from that.
But you reminded me of something. The halflings.
Got you. Oh, yes, the halflings. Yeah.
The halflings
so
were
don't
not...
have an island.
They don't have an island, and they were not always on this world.
Okay, yeah, sorry, go ahead. And
during the era of gods, the first era, there was no halflings.
Okay.
The halflings appeared during the God War. Just like suddenly, like probably around 5 to 10 years into the God War, 2 massive fleets of ships appeared. One was massive black boats that sailed in the ocean, and that became the Black Armada, and that's where the stout halflings are. And the other is massive flying ships that were painted like blue, light blue, and they're called the Soaring Fleet, and that's where the Lightfoot halflings live. And so those are the 2 halfling groups that just kind of showed up 10 years into the God War and kind of like didn't really participate, but participated on every side.
Yeah. I'm going to be honest, like breaking a little bit of like the question answering. This was one of the like races that I was looking into for my character for this.
Yeah.
Because I was like, these halflings seem so dope.
There's a lot of lore with the halflings.
So no one knows how they showed up. They just
suddenly sailing up to one of the islands, a huge fleet of black ships.
Okay.
And then suddenly flying over one of the islands, a huge ship of flying boats. And all of the halflings live there. They're like self-sustaining on these boats.
That's super interesting. Okay, cool.
Yep.
So do they have some form of government between the two? Are they warring against each other?
They're not warring against each other, but they do not cooperate.
Got you. Okay.
They're completely separate entities, but they're not like in a fight.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. So we've gone over the Templars. We've gone over the corruption. I guess, are there any other like major game players with like Templar wise or like other organizations that are at play that we should know about for the future?
I kind of already mentioned the Faith of Capsella.
Okay, Faith of Capsella.
But they're not like a world power. They're more of like an island power.
Okay.
They rule, they're the government of the island of Capsella.
Got you.
It's theocracy.
Theocracy, yeah.
Yeah, it's a government run by the religion. So
got you. Cool. And then we have like the magic crafters. They're not really like a political type power, but
they have a lot of political sway because they do succeed in making technology work.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they use magicite to do it.
Okay, cool.
So they use magicite to make the old ancient relic items run.
Yeah.
And so a lot of their job is to figure out how to make the magicite work with the ancient relics.
Mm-hmm. is there a way for us, as we're like traveling, can we make an ordinary item a relic or
No.
no?
No. You can't make an ordinary item a relic.
Okay, so you would have to be like in that specific age to create, because there was just a bunch of magic at that time.
There was just so
You
much
just
magic
make
in
it-
the air, it was easy to make something like that.
Nowadays, it's like we don't have enough magic to do so.
Nope. And then part of the Magic Crafter's goal is to try to make new things like that.
And so far, they haven't succeeded.
So far, well, they've succeeded, but they have to make it out of solid magicite,
Wow. Okay.
which is hard. Because while magicite's easy to gather, there are different techniques in how to like
forge
and craft it. It's a very volatile material, and so the techniques are kept very secret. So the Magic Crafters know how to turn it into like batteries, basically.
Okay.
They know how to carve it in certain ways and refine it into batteries. The Templars know how to carve it and forge it into weapons to absorb the corruption. And the Hunters know how to turn it into a specialized powder that can be used as a component for higher level spell slots.
Do they use it like black powder for like guns and stuff? Or like...
They use it more. They use it more like a drug.
Oh,
Like the powder basically gives you a little
remember,
bit.
this is a family-friendly podcast.
I know.
Trent.
Hey, look, I know it's a family-friendly podcast, and like none of your characters are drug addicts or anything like
No,
that.
yeah.
But like, it basically, you have the powder and you like eat it like a pixie stick almost,
Okay.
and then it gives you a rush of energy to cast a higher level spell slot.
Okay.
And
so it's
they're-
not something you use almost like other magical components. You have to
No,
ingest it.
you
to
you
use it.
ingest it to use it
Okay.
and then you consume it and it's used.
Yeah, and it's
Um,
used by you.
But there are some people that'll buy it and then give it to someone to consume, and then they don't
use it.
they don't use it to cast magic, and they just ride that energy high that is injected into them, basically.
Got you. Okay.
And
So there are druggies in this world.
for sure,
Got
and
you.
they use
Okay.
that magicite powder as drugs.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Can people get like? Can they do the same thing with the corruption, or will they just get corrupted?
They'll just
Could
get
they
corrupted.
use like small doses of it, or no?
They'll just get corrupted.
They'll
No
just
one
corrupt.
can really control the corruption either.
Got
So like you couldn't
Okay.
do a small dose of it.
Okay. Well, I think that's all the questions that I really had about like world lore wise. If you have any other questions,
I don't have questions. Do
No.
you have any other questions you want to ask? They don't have to be world lore. They can be anything.
man, Cassiel's head thing, thorn
Yeah.
thing. Can I ask
Yeah.
about that?
That's more of his background
That's
thing.
more of his background.
But
thing.
that
And that's
comes,
coming up soon.
That's
hopefully,
coming
right?
up soon, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's partially because he's a hexblood.
Gotcha.
And hexbloods have these weird things growing out of them, normally like
Oh,
horns
that's-
or
yeah.
plants or something like that. And so he flavored it to be like the golden thing.
Okay.
So that's where that comes from. But more details of that will come in his backstory.
Got you.
Yeah.
Yeah. All the other questions that I have are kind of just backgrounds for our characters. I think you answered a lot of the world questions very, very well. So
Sweet.
thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you for being here. Sorry, I feel like I talked a lot more than you did, but
hey, you were dropping all the hard knowledge for
yeah,
this,
that's true.
so there's no worries there. But thank you so much.
Yeah, of course, thank you. And listeners, hopefully we answered some of your questions in this. If not, feel free to send us an email or write us a 5-star review and leave that question. I'm sure that we will do a Q&A episode at some point in the future. No, like, set down hard plans yet, but I'm sure we'll do it at some point in the future. But if you send it in a 5-star review, we'll read your 5-star review and we'll read the question and then we'll probably answer it. So if you've got a desperate question, leave us a 5-star review. You can also find us on Instagram or Twitter/X, whatever you want to call it now. And we might answer questions if you send us through that as well.
Mm-hmm. So our handles for that are Channel Divinity Pod for Instagram and Facebook, and then capital C, capital D, Pod 23 for Twitter.
Cool. Thank you so much for listening to this special bonus episode of Channel Divinity, and we will see you all next week with another regular scheduled broadcast.
Keep tuning in.
Bye.